Welcome to Sarder TV, an idea-sharing platform founded by Russell Sarder, who's an author, investor, and the CEO of Netcom Learning. I'm Vaishali Jain, and we're excited to have Steve Anderson join us today. Steve is the author of the book, The Bezos Letters, 14 Principles to Grow Your Business Like Amazon, and he's here to tell us more about the book. Steve, thank you so much for joining us today. It's great to have you here.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
So tell us a little bit about yourself and your background.
So I have spent my working career involved in one way or another in the insurance industry. The first about 23 or 4 years working in insurance agencies, selling insurance primarily to business customers, so helping them manage their insurance program and protecting against the problems that they might face as a business. For the last 20 years, I shifted a bit, still in the insurance industry, but focused more on technology. As you know, the last 20 years has seen a tremendous amount of growth in the use of technology, so I focused on that intersection between insurance and risk management and new and emerging technologies, both from internal operations, but also from the client perspective. As clients are using new technologies, what insurance problems, implications, and coverages are necessary.
Tell us what inspired you to write the Bezos Letters.
So a few years ago, I started thinking about this question of the interplay between risk-taking and business growth. And as technology has continued to grow and develop, I came to believe that the biggest risk a business faces may actually be not taking enough risk. So certainly coming from the insurance industry, that was a very different thought and idea. But I've seen many companies transition successfully and many not, that now are out of business because of the changes that consumers experienced and their expectations. And so that led me to start researching those companies. And as one of the success examples, I certainly came across Amazon. And in my research of, okay, why and how, right? Why did Amazon grow as fast as it did, and how did they go about doing it? I came across the shareholder letters that Jeff Bezos has written, 21 to date, starting in 1997 to 2018. And realized he had laid out, hidden in plain sight, his plan for growing Amazon from the very beginning. And that certainly intrigued me, right?
Now, you could have written the book from taking many different views and approaches. Why did you decide to write the book from the lens of risk?
So obviously my background was all about risk, and most of that time mitigating, reducing, trying to do away with risk. And as I started exploring this idea that risk may be an asset, not just a negative, in reading the letters, Bezos actually, what I called him in the book, was the master of risk. I believe he either intuitively or learned, and I think a combination of both, that risk-taking was essential for Amazon to grow. And so that gave me a different perspective about Amazon. And obviously a lot of people talk about Amazon and their growth and what they do and how they do it, but nothing that I saw took it from that perspective. And frankly, I believe that is a key to growth for Amazon, but also a key for growth to any business.
So you've studied Amazon as an organization from many perspectives. Give us a little background on its history and how it got started.
Well, actually, Bezos graduated from Princeton University and moved to New York City. Worked for a hedge fund here for a number of years, very successfully, very smart at the time. And this was in the mid-90s, so if you remember that, it's sometimes hard. Internet was brand new, and he started researching this thing called the internet. Are there business opportunities there? And came across a statistic that the internet was growing at 2,300% a year in terms of people using it. And he said that just doesn't happen very often. So became very intrigued with that and started looking at, okay, what kind of business could that growth and that communication platform generate? And so he actually created a list of 20 different types of products that he could sell. So it wasn't his love for books that had him choose that first. It was, he felt that was one of the better types of products to be able to sell, because frankly, one book is exactly like another book wherever you get it. And so he left the hedge fund and took a big risk right there, right? Leaving a very well-paying job to start this startup that he says, I don't know if this is going to work or not, but I need to give it a try.
So your book is based on the letter to shareholders that Jeff Bezos has written over the last 21 years. Tell us about some ideas and patterns that have emerged from there.
That became very interesting to me because I did actually start seeing patterns. So I read the letters, probably like a lot of people that might be interested in Amazon. When the letters come out each year, you see lots of articles about what's in the letter. But when I sat down and read them in a row as a single narrative, almost like a book, there are over 48,000 words in the 21 letters. So it is a book. The patterns that started emerging were actually quite a few, and that's where the principles that I talk about in the book come out of, as those patterns that are repeated over and over. And the original 1997 letter actually became a very pivotal letter, to me very interesting. Every single letter since, so 98 through 2018, he always ends the letter in some form or fashion saying, as is my practice, I attach our 1997 letter. And he continually points people back to that original letter. By the way, he also says in that statement, it's still day one, which is one of the principles.
So how did you go about researching and validating the material that's included in your book? What was your methodology for writing your book?
Well, the first idea that became the book was actually a white paper. So I had done an analysis, kind of an executive summary of each of the letters, what I thought were some of the key points, some key quotes, what I called milestones, so stock price, number of customers, number of store, right, just some of those metrics for following Amazon's growth. And fortunately, I have a few friends, including my wife, who is co-author on the book, who've been in the book business for a long time. And I sent them an early draft of the white paper, and they came back and said, no, this is a book. So then, from kind of white paper, single sheet, developed it into, okay, what else is here? So I went through and found as many as I could, either video, audio, interviews, all kinds of material, actually including a very bad video of a speech he gave at now I'm not going to remember the name of the college, but college outside of Chicago in 1998. So again, very early on. And again, what caught my attention was these repeating themes, the things he talks about. And again, that's where the principles came out of. So I watched them, transcribed them, dug into the research, what other people were saying about it, and have pretty extensive footnotes in the book just to help other people to find some of these resources in their own, if they're interested.
So the first principle you talk about in your book is called encourage successful failure. And you note how Jeff Bezos has mentioned how making billion-dollar mistakes doesn't matter. Tell us more about this.
Isn't that an amazing statement?
It is.
And it's hard to get your head around in terms of, okay, how can you do that? So encourage successful failure is the idea that at Amazon, they really do have a culture of encouraging every employee to test and experiment. And when you test and experiment, you don't know if it's going to work. If you do, then it's not an experiment, right? So experimentation requires failure. But unfortunately, most businesses punish failure, right? As an employee, if you don't do something right or you have a project or a product and it fails, that could be a career-ending move. At Amazon, it's just the opposite. Now, I have to say here, Amazon has an intolerance for incompetence. So you are always expected to bring your A game, bring your best to whatever you're doing. So they don't want just failure. That actually, repeated failure is not acceptable. But experimenting, testing an idea, figuring out beforehand what the experiment is, what you anticipate to be the outcome, is a core cultural value. And every employee at Amazon is expected to do that.
So what are considered some of Amazon's successful failures?
Well, and actually there have been quite a few along the way. Real quick, a couple early ones. In around 2000, again, if you remember the internet history, the .com bust. Well, Amazon had made significant investments in a couple of those. Pets.com, drugstore.com, lost complete everything, right, when the capital markets froze and all the stuff that went on there. So big failure. And they did it as a way to grow faster. Fast forward, 2014, Amazon released what most people don't remember, which is their Fire phone. So a phone, remember, again, 2014, we already had Android, we already had iPhones, right? There were a lot of those out. What could Amazon bring that was different? What's sort of interesting to me is that was Bezos' pet project. He had this vision for an Amazon phone. There was a few technology advances there, but frankly, it was a phone to help you shop on Amazon easier. People already could shop on Amazon. So at one point, they lowered the price of the phone to 99 cents, and so they couldn't give it away. Failure. Cost. That quarter, the last quarter of that year, 2014, they wrote off $178 million in inventory that they couldn't move. Big failure. Where's the success? The group that created the phone was also the group subsequent that created the Echo. So they used what they learned in voice processing and technology and how a phone works and translated as much as they could into the Echo. And I think today, you can, I won't call it a huge bet yet, but it is certainly on a trajectory to being one of their more successful product offerings.
So certainly Amazon was able to take what they learned from this failure and apply it successfully to other projects and things. So they do really reward that type of behavior, risk-taking. How can leaders and other organizations use what Amazon practices to apply it in their own businesses?
Well, I think it starts with this idea of creating a safe-to-risk culture and rewarding employees, not punishing them. And that can be a mindset. I mean, if you've built a culture in your company that doesn't think that way, that can take a while to get employees to actually believe you, right, as an owner or a manager or CEO, whatever. But if you're going to stay current and be able to adapt to the rapidly changing technology, which I don't see slowing down, then being inventive and innovative is a key skill that every business needs to incorporate within their culture, and that's employee incentives. Actually, what I ask a lot of businesses now is, what's your employee bonus program for the most successful failure? And there are a handful of businesses, actually including NASA, that actually has an annual award that's named differently, but is this idea of, you tried, it didn't work, but what did we learn, or how was the needle move forward because of what you did?
Are you able to share any examples of that from companies?
Well, yeah, actually, here in New York City, Gray Advertising, fairly well known, they actually call it the Epic Failure Award. And they have several examples of employees that tried different advertising techniques and some really crazy stuff, and they got an award for it. And again, the award is not money. It's a kind of a, what do I call it, a crazy little trophy kind of thing. At Amazon, it's actually a Nike sneaker. So they have a similar idea where they reward, in their case, the employees that do something on behalf of the customer that really moves the engagement. And again, that goes back to customer obsession, which I will hopefully talk about.
Tell us a little bit more about Principle 2, which is bet on big ideas. What is this about, and how has it been applied at Amazon?
Yeah, so Principle 2 is in the first of 4 cycles. So all the 14 principles are in 4 cycles: test, build, accelerate, and scale. And that first cycle is test, which is where the experimentation idea. And the bet on big ideas happens at Amazon actually quite a bit. What Bezos calls their 3 big bets are Amazon Marketplace, Prime, right, which most of us know about, right, and Amazon Web Services, their cloud computing platform. All of those started as small little experimental tests. They weren't sure. In fact, with Marketplace, they had 2 iterations prior to Marketplace that were failures. It didn't work. But they kept thinking, testing, trying. And then they were able to understand the benefit of what those could do and then be able to bet on those ideas. And 2 things I think are important. One, provide resources, but frankly at Amazon a lot of times it's not money. You know, it may be personnel, it may be some other things. And as Bezos describes, we give those ideas room to grow. So we don't expect huge success right away. If we think the concept, the idea is worth it, we'll give it room to grow and scale. And I think that's the bet on big ideas idea of how Amazon does it.
How can smaller organizations who maybe don't have big pockets or as many resources as larger organizations be able to do something like this on a smaller scale?
It's a great question because I think a lot of smaller businesses, everywhere from a solopreneur startup to just a few employees to maybe 50 or 100, how can we do that? I think the bet on big ideas is not just about money. You know, it's not just about how much dollars can we throw at this. It really is, one, rewarding that employee for being able to come up with these ideas and then giving some space for that to grow. Just as an external example, Google is fairly well known for their 20% time for certain employees, engineers primarily, where products like Gmail came out of. And so giving space to employees on, quote, company time, so there's some expense there, right? But what are the benefits and how can those ideas be rolled out further?
So companies like Google and Amazon do encourage employees to take those risks, to think outside of the box. How do you get your employees to do that? How do you get them to think big and think about creative ideas that actually can be applied in the workplace?
I think a great place to start is incentives for the employee, right? And, you know, again, we've talked a bit about awards or, you know, some of those kinds of things, but one of them could be actually ownership in the idea, meaning they get a piece of the profits, right? So you literally are saying to the employee, one, we respect your ideas. If you are helping the business grow, then you should also be rewarded for helping and thinking and testing and figuring out maybe some late nights of how this could work. But I think the incentives, and again, I want to be clear, it's not just money. Sometimes it could be that just weird trophy, right? But it's recognition of the contribution that they make. And I think any business, and frankly, any organization, I mean, I've talked to a few nonprofits that are taking some of these principles to heart also. So I certainly address businesses, but I think many different types of organizations could learn from this.
There's something called Lab 126 that's set up at Amazon, which is around innovation and invention and things. Can you tell us a little bit about it and what the goal of this Lab 126 is?
So every employee at Amazon is expected to invent on behalf of the customer. And by the way, that's a phrase Bezos uses a lot in his letters. However, there are certain situations because of skill and additional resources that a separate group is important. A lot of businesses call that a research and development team. Well, that's what Lab 126 is. It's based outside of San Francisco, and it's the hardware development team. So Lab 126 is where the Kindle e-reader came out of. And again, as Bezos says in 2007 letter, we had the audacious idea to improve the book. Right, so anyway, that's a whole nother story, but that was Lab 126. We've already talked about the Fire phone. That's where that came out, and the Echo. So different skill set, and primarily in Amazon's case, hardware-based, devices that they make available. By the way, the 126 is A to Z. Number 1 letter in the alphabet is A, number 26 letter is Z, and it hooks in with the Amazon logo, which is also supposed to be, we can provide everything that you need.
Why is this important for Amazon? Why is Lab 126 important? And how can organizations replicate something similar if they needed to?
Well, I think it's important, as I said, because hardware is different than selling e-commerce. So you may need to carve out as a business certain areas that you want to go into that may be outside. So again, think about the Kindle. Amazon was known as an e-commerce platform up until the Kindle device, their actually first physical device that they sold, and it became widely popular. They carved that out from kind of the normal operation procedures of what they had done previously. And so I think businesses, as they think about where else could we go, right? That's one thought. And how do we get there? And do we need to set up a different group in order to do that? And again, give them resources and experience, and the talent is different to create a physical device than it is to sell online.
One of the principles that you outline in the book is obsess over customers, which is probably one of the biggest things I believe has made Amazon so successful. So tell us a little bit more about the importance of this at Amazon.
It's core in just about everything they do. Back to Bezos' comment, inventing on behalf of the customer. So when businesses think about customers, there are typically several things they think about. It's customer service, right? Customer experience, customer focus, customer journey. But at Amazon, Bezos uses obsession. Whole different context to it, and actually can be negative. Meaning, when we think about somebody who's obsessive, right, it can be single focus to the exclusion of everything else. And at Amazon, that's the lens they use for everything they look at. Obsession is the key, and I think you're right. I have to agree. Obsession is the key at Amazon. That is the lens, the filter. Everything they do at Amazon is sent through. Is this better for the customer? And I've been exploring a little bit the question, can that go too far? Right, so Amazon now is getting some pushback on marketplace sellers that are kicked off the platform. But if you understand that Amazon is obsessed with the customer, if I'm a third-party seller who's selling to Amazon customers, I better treat them the way Amazon treats them. And if I don't, Amazon is absolutely going to cut me off. Right, so it's understanding that. And I think too many people don't get that piece of it in terms of using the Amazon platform for their own business.
How do organizations know which areas they should focus on or obsess over when it comes to focusing more on their customer?
Let me give you one example that comes to mind. At Amazon, a customer having to contact them because there's a problem, what normally we would say is customer service, and most businesses think customer service is just something they have to do. At Amazon, that's considered a failure. The fact that a customer had a problem is the first failure. The fact they had to contact is another failure. Here's the first failure. What's wrong with our process? So I tell a quick story that actually this happened to my wife as we were writing the book. A quick story that she ordered Keurig coffee cups, and she's a decaf drinker, which I'm not sure why, but anyway. And she got like Columbia high test roast, and got on chat and said, I ordered this. It is this on the website is what it says, but I got this in the mail. So sorry, we'll send another order. If it's still wrong, please call us at this number. And so she did, they did. She got the same thing back again. She called, they said, we're very sorry, keep the two. We're taking it off our platform because obviously something's wrong. And here's I think a $10 or $20 gift certificate for your inconvenience. Right, so I absolutely can imagine that was flagged and somebody went into the process and figured out what happened and not just fix that, fix the reason it happened in the first place. So when you think about customer service, if you start thinking about it as a failure, then how does that change how you interact with your customers? One other quick comment. Self-service at Amazon is very highly regarded. If you have a problem, you should be able to fix it yourself. And automated fixing is also highly regarded, meaning what can we do at Amazon to see a problem even before our customers know about it? So again, a quick, I hope quick, story. Video streaming. And I include this story in the book. Video streaming, gentleman was writing an article and was trying to view Casablanca and taking business lessons from the movie. Fast forward, rewind, just was going through and through. And he got an email from Amazon that said, we noticed you had trouble viewing Casablanca. Well, what's your first question? You noticed I had trouble. And they proactively refunded the cost of renting that movie. So again, different levels, automated, self-service, fix the problem so we don't have any of those other things. Yeah, interestingly, even for my book, so I bought it, right? I got it, and then let's just say a few days later, I got a notice from Amazon that there was a lower price, $1.78, something like that, and that they had proactively already refunded the money to my credit card. Again, part of that automated idea of don't wait for the customer to ask. And that goes back to customer obsession too, right? If it's better for the customer, it will ultimately be better for Amazon and their shareholders. So don't think, you could, in fact, many businesses would say, well, the customer didn't ask for the refund. They bought it, too bad, not Amazon. They automatically refund that money.
Talk a little about the importance of setting long-term goals at Amazon and how that's contributed to their success while being timely.
So I'm going to go to the 97 letter. Bezos has a section in that letter titled, It's All About the Long Term. And I'm going to read his words. Here's a quote. We believe that a fundamental measure of our success will be the shareholder value we create over the long term. As I analyzed all the letters, one of the key traits of Bezos is long-term thinking. And it's not just next year. He goes on in that same 97 letter, and he talks about it's not easy to work here. You can work long, hard, or smart, but at Amazon, you can't choose 2 out of the 3, which is an interesting comment. But here's what's key. We are working to build something important, something that matters to our customers, something that we can all tell our grandchildren about. Now this is 97, his kids are very young. He doesn't even have grandchildren yet, and he's already thinking, this is something we can tell our grandchildren about. So for Bezos, long-term thinking is multi-generational. And that's even been more so as the last 21 years. Again, quick example, I hope. He has funded, Bezos, a 10,000-year clock. It's being built on his ranch in West Texas, and literally is a clock designed to run for 10,000 years. Now that's crazy, right? And it could be just somebody who has more money than he knows what to do with, but it really supports his mindset about long-term thinking. The other is Blue Origin, his space company. And I actually make in the book a number of connections there with risk-taking and his fascination with space and building Blue Origin. But he's building Blue Origin so that future generations will have an inexpensive way to get to space. And he calls it building the infrastructure necessary to go to space. Because when he started Amazon in the late 90s, there was already the internet, there was already UPS and the Postal Service to deliver packages, there was already credit cards available to pay online. The infrastructure was built, and there he didn't have to build it. That's his long-term thinking. He's trying to do that with Blue Origin. Now, as a company, right, how do you apply that? Well, I don't know that you can think, I have a hard time thinking multi-generational, but you certainly can think longer than the next quarter results. And that's what the Wall Street mindset right now for public companies certainly try and force companies into, at the detriment of their long-term growth, profitability, et cetera. So at Amazon, those first probably 10 to 12 years at least, very little profit. And if you look at its stock price, I include this in the book, if you look at their stock price, year-end stock price, very flat, very low, and then, but all of a sudden, it starts taking off in about 2014-15. Why? Because of all that investment and Bezos' long-term thinking. We're going to invest long-term because ultimately it will benefit Amazon and their shareholders. So again, as a business, what can you do that today that you will bet on 3 to 5 years from now?
I think it's about making sure that you're able to bet long term without missing the boat, or making sure that you continue to have that competitive edge, right? So
Yes.
how do you balance the two?
Well, and I think that's, to me, what's interesting about the principles, because they don't operate just on their own, but they operate in conjunction with each other. So you can have long-term thinking and still practice dynamic invention and innovation, which will help change or inform your long-term thinking, right? But it's not just one or the other, it's how they can work together.
One of the principles you describe is called accelerate high velocity decisions.
Yep.
And describes 2 different types of decisions. Tell us about those.
So Bezos describes 2, as you said, 2 different types of decision. He calls them type 1 and type 2. Type 1 decisions are really important, bet the farm type of decisions. And he says you should make those decisions slowly and with as much information as you can. Type 2 decisions are easily reversible. As he describes it, those are the kind of decisions that you can walk through that door, look on the other side, and say, I don't like this, and either move back or pivot to a different decision to go someplace else. He says, unfortunately, as businesses grow, they tend to move from type 2 decisions in early stages of growth into type 1 decision, where there are multi-layers of decision making. And when you do that, that slows down decision making, which absolutely will slow down business growth. And so at Amazon, they work very hard at having those type 2 decisions made at the lowest level possible, with the skill, experience, knowledge to be able to make that decision, but also understanding if somebody makes a bad decision, we'll just change it. And they do actually very quickly change their mind, if it's necessary.
Tell us about the 6-page narrative tool that's used within the organization and how it can help leaders grow their businesses.
So the 6-page narrative is a tool that Amazon uses, all areas really. And here's what it is. 1, Bezos has banned PowerPoint or any slide-oriented presentation at any meeting at Amazon worldwide. So that doesn't happen. So what does? If you call a meeting for a decision, let's say you've got a new product that you want to get buy-in and move forward on, me as the project lead, is required to create a maximum of 6-page memo. That memo typically starts with a future press release. So you write the press release for the day the product is actually released to the public. And then you go into FAQs, what is the product? How does it improve the customer experience? What are the resources needed? What data are you using to indicate that this is a problem with customers that needs to be solved? That memo, as Bezos describes, takes at least a week for a good one. And one of the career-ending moves at Amazon is to write a bad memo. So it's that important. In fact, if you go on Amazon's website and you look under how to interview at Amazon, they describe you may be requested to write a topic because writing is very important at Amazon. So it's just interesting. All right, so here's also what's different. That meeting is called, that memo is not sent out beforehand. It's handed out in physical form at the meeting. And as Bezos describes it, the first 10 to 30 minutes of the meeting is spent everybody reading the memo. Because he says, while people have good intentions to read it beforehand, they often don't. And so spending that time in study hall actually gets everybody on this exact same page. And then the discussion is about questions, not what does the memo say, because we've just read it. Here's the other implication, back to successful failure. If that product doesn't have the results expected, now we have a document to go back to later saying, what didn't we get right? What didn't we understand? What assumption did we make that didn't pan out the way we thought? It's a tool for the beginning. It's also a tool at the end to say, what can we learn the next time and apply? Fascinating tool, isn't it? I mean, think about that study hall, and think about how many meetings wouldn't be called if you had to go through that whole process for every meeting.
There's a lot of data available to organizations today, and metrics and keeping track of metrics is very important to any organization, right? So tell us how Amazon approaches metrics, and what are some key takeaways that we can learn from Amazon and that business leaders can apply?
Amazon's a very data-driven company. They have massive amounts of data on customer interaction, what you click on, which goes to helping the customer find other products, right? The traditional people who bought this also bought that. I mean, that's back to the customer and helping them discover what they might want to buy next. And at Amazon, data, they question data. So the principle is measure what matters, question what's measured, and then trust your gut. And the question what's measured is, from Bezos' perspective, are we measuring the right thing? Are we actually getting the information we think we are getting? Or is the data skewed? And here's one way he helps with that. In one of the early letters, he published his email address, jeff@amazon.com. That's still an address you can write to. He doesn't respond very seldom, according to him, anymore, but he has a team that looks at those emails, and in certain situations, an email might be forwarded or Jeff might see it because it's a customer with a problem. And so he believes anecdotal information is as important as the analytic information. And I think that's very interesting because if his team, or he, sees a trend in those emails, then he'll send an email he'll forward the email to the department head, the product head, whoever's responsible, with just a question mark. And what I've learned at Amazon is you do not want to get one of those emails from Jeff because it is what's going on here, right? And then the trust your gut really goes back, let me use Prime as an example. Prime was a crazy idea. How in the world can we afford? In fact, senior leaders at Amazon said to Jeff, how can we afford to do this? Flat fee for free shipping for 2 days. How can we do this? He believed in his gut that if it benefited the customer, it would benefit Amazon. And they did some experimenting before that. You may remember they had Super Saver shipping, right? $25, and then you could, and so they tested a little bit, but at one point, he just decided, we're going to do this and see what happens. And again, data but questioning the data and then trusting your gut going forward. So yes, they're very data-driven, but not exclusively data-driven. And I think that's what's important for businesses to actually understand better. I get asked all the time, right, analytics, and what do we learn from this? And it's a huge topic. But I think there's a balance there that Bezos brings out that I think applies to any business.
Steve, this was great. Thank you so much for joining us. This was really insightful and very helpful. I'm sure
my
our viewers
pleasure.
will really benefit from it.
Thank you so much for having me.
And we'll see you next time on Sarder TV.